Hey guys, this will be video 18 for the how to design build a 58 Explorer replica and using Stuart McDonald templates sometimes, but we're way beyond needing to do that. I had no idea that I was even going to do a video because I was sitting there trimming this binding, and all of a sudden it hit me. It's like, well, you know, you're in a good mood when you want to do a video. So I wanted to do a video and just show you some of this work and just talk about some of the things that you can do to make certain that you don't ever touch that wood until you just have to. And it's awesome. I still have not wiped that, cleaned that, scraped that, or anything other than just the initial sand work that I did on the front end. Now, I did wipe this back a little bit with some acetone when I was cleaning it on the back, and you can see. I got to tell you, this would be, you'd have to be really savvy about assessing species of wood to not think that this was a vintage Brazilian rosewood. This Madagascar rosewood from Stuart McDonald is, I've never seen anything this beautiful. And Ed knows me by now. I'm not just saying that to BS anybody or anything. It's really, it's absolutely incredible. And I don't remember us ever having this. I don't even remember seeing this 5 or 10 years ago. I don't. So anyway, maybe do some research. But this is an absolutely incredible wood, and it was only like 140 bucks, 38 bucks, machined, radiused, and all that stuff. And I've already covered that in extensive detail. So you could almost say you got the fretboard for free, and you just can't find that. You can't machine that unless you had an enormous stock of wood and CNC machines and all that stuff. And we don't have that type of stuff. So, but I wanted to just talk to you about some of the operations that I went through this morning when I was got all the tape off of it. And the first thing that you're going to see is exactly what we saw before we taped it up. It's kind of gummed up a little bit and overhanging just enough to spend maybe 15 minutes worth of time scraping. And basically all I did was just go over to my other table, and I had a block of wood up against the, because my basement, this is a concrete wall basement. So when I put a concrete block up against the basement wall, it's not going anywhere. So then I was able to just take my scraper and very gently kind of ease off the binding, and then clean it off a little bit and keep a real close eye on it, watching the curling binding, and then right at the point where you begin to see just a little bit of color. Well, you're not there yet because you're getting into the glue that is stained with the color from the wood. So, but from there on out, you want to start really stopping and pausing and assessing the fact that you're truly, that you're staying true and level on the back, and that you're not creating any sort of goalies or anything. Just, straight up common sense. So, but it's amazing how you can get impatient, or you can get scraper happy and really enjoy doing the work, only to realize that you've gone too far and you've created a bit of a dip. So don't do that. Really take your time. And the cool thing about us using this tall stuff, it actually acts as a platform by which it holds the fretboard up. So any surface that you put it on, you're not having to worry about the radius of the fretboard buckle on you. So even though I had a towel on the table, the fretboard was perfectly true and in contact with the table. So as I'm scraping, I'm not having to worry about it moving around on me. So you do go ahead and scrape this to a finished state. And then when you start getting down kind of close, that's where you can kind of come in and start just kind of verifying that you're true. And you'll see it. It's obvious. And then just be prepared to move to the next stage. And the next stage was, let me get a different, let me pause and see if I can locate a bit. Okay, I'm using I like to use a dovetail bit. If I'm going to use a router bit in my drill press overhead station to do a real controlled trim, I like using a dovetail bit because I can really identify, where that point is. Because the last thing I want to do is run the risk of, you're not going to do that. I mean, but if you're really paying attention, I think it took me something like 25 passes in order to take off that small amount of material right there on this side, so that I was truly guaranteeing that I had the perfect amount of bite in, that all I was doing, but I was taking off the entire piece of binding, but just to the point where there was just a small amount of curl that kind of came off at the end. So, could you use this dovetail bit? Of course you could, because all you're doing is running at about 2,800 to 3,000 RPMs. It doesn't have to run very fast. And what you do is you can just put a clamp, a straight edge across your drill press deck with quick grips on either side, because see, you've got to have the you can't, just like we were talking about the fence stuff, you can't have a tall fence, because you've got to be able to get the dovetail bit or whatever bit you use all the way down. So you have to have a piece of material that is true and straight, yet thinner than your fretboard, yet strong enough that it's not going to buckle on you, and then clamp on either side. And that's exactly what I've got. I've got like a 3-inch yardstick. It's an aluminum one, but nonetheless, that's what I was using. And I've got, but not this big. It's a real small, a 1/4-inch dove bit. It's a 1/4-inch shank. But then that's what I was doing. I was just doing real short passes, and then after I got down to that pass right there, I got to thinking about something that man, no one would know this unless they've really done a lot of fretboard work. But because this fretboard is radiused and it is wider out here than it is up here. In other words, it's thicker in the middle than it is out on the sides. We all know that. So just by physics, what's going to happen after it's all said and done, the binding is going to be taller up here because you're closer to the thicker center line. In other words, the fretboard is literally thicker out here on the edge than it is down here. So with that said, what that means, if you came in and you tried to take this cut all the way to the absolute very bottom, well, then by the time you got to about right here, you would have screwed up really bad, because you will be getting closer to the center line, which is thicker, and you are now creating a step. And if you proceeded, if you kept pushing through, well, you would come out down here and you would have ended up being probably a 32nd to a 64th of an inch stepped down. And is that the end of the job? It's pretty darn close to it, because see, your frets have got to overhang and rest on that right there. So make certain that you're thinking along the lines of all of that finish work is going to be done on the guitar. When I'm truly building a guitar, I'm finishing the guitar. And before this video ends, there's a very, very strong possibility I'm going to be gluing this down to the actual guitar. So if you're wanting to see that operation, maybe fast forward all the way through and see if I actually covered it. But if I don't cover it in this video, you can bet your it'll be covered in the next video, probably within a few hours after this video gets uploaded or something like that. But I'm going to try to do that. But this will probably be a fairly long video like the last two, but just covering a lot of information. So with that said, I can check off that box, and I feel better now that I let you know. Just be real careful. Don't try to go back over there to the routing station and take this down just a little bit more, so you don't have to do just a little bit of sanding up here. Because what's going to happen once it's on the guitar, now you're going to have the ability to take your files and just come in here and very slowly let that file rest on the radius out there, and then you're going to be able to just very gently level out. It's pretty much going to be flat. It's not going to be radiused out there because it's such a short distance, but it will definitely be on the same pitch. That whatever that pitch is right there, whatever that degree is, it might be a half a degree, 1 degree. Well, then that's pretty much what you've got to have out there. In other words, you couldn't machine this all the way down and it remain flat, because your frets have got to go out there and sit. And if it's not perfectly true with the fretboard, neither below the fretboard or above the fretboard, then you've still got work to do. If you screwed up and got below it just a little bit, I'd say don't stop the job. Just go ahead and do all your fret work, and then make the determination of maybe putting a little bit of epoxy under each fret end and stuff like that. But we don't want to do that type work. But do keep in mind, after the guitar is completely built, it will be it's called easing the edge. When you round anything over, I will be easing the edge just ever so slightly more in between each fret. So if you did get a little bit low, it wouldn't be the end of the world to kind of encourage whatever you see to disappear. Because if you've ever picked up a guitar that's more than 15 or 20 years old, man, they're freaking worn out, or well, actually 30, 35 years old. They're worn out on the edges, and the fretboard's all funky and scalloped and stuff from where it got played and all that for its entire life. So let me stop creating all these hypotheticals, but nonetheless, dude, let's do a really good job and let's know when to stop. And I can just well, I can't catch my finger on that, so I was getting pretty close. So I'm catching it up here. So basically, I did machine it to almost the finished point down there. But once I got up here, I'm still catching my thumbnail a bit. So that's pretty close to the finished guitar right there, except I'm going to do a little bit of radius. And how do I do that radius work? Like I just showed you. But alongside with, well, wherever it is. Oh, here it is. Stuart McDonald 12-inch. That's the traditional Les Paul Gretsch. So pretty much every guitar build is the 12-inch radius, and you'll right at the very end. Very unlikely that I will come in with a 220, but I may. There's a possibility I might make just one or two passes with the 220 once it's on the actual guitar, where I'll have the ability to clamp the body, and then I'll make just one or maybe two passes, maybe three with the 220, but very quickly I'm going to be going to the 400, and then with the 400, just allowing that contour to kind of do the final shaping, and probably 15 or 20 passes with this, and then come back and assess it, take the crosscut file, see if I see anything funky. Might even take the scraper, because I'm pretty good with the scraper, and just come across very gently and see if I see any of the but make certain this is a fairly wide scraper chisel if you do that, and then just kind of make certain that I don't feel any humps or anything. But by the time you do one pass with a 220, 10 or 15 passes with the 400 with a contoured tool, then you're gonna be pretty much ready to fret the guitar. Okay, and then before you do fret the guitar, that's where you'll after you've done all that shaping, then you're gonna come in here, and this blade's a little bit thicker. I'll need my other X-Acto knife, which is a thinner blade. I'll go down in there, and if there's any glue down in there, I'll be kind of getting a hold of that glue and just working it out. And basically I'll be pulling up, but I need to stop because I might run the risk of scraping the board. So in other words, you got some glue down there. There's no sense in trying to come in here and heat the tip of this blade and melt up into the binding in order to allow the fret tang to go a little bit further, because there's a real strong possibility you're going to be rounding about 30 to 40% of that top material off, and the last thing you'd want to do is round over into it and then expose the end of the tang. So don't be tempted to cut up into your binding. Take advantage of your 60 thousandths binding and step each fret tang, but do definitely take each fret tang right up to the very edge. And if it's too tight, file it a little bit till it fits. If you overshoot your filing, then move it down into a different location and then start over. So each one of your frets are going to need to be fit really precise between each bay right there, and because we don't want that the fret itself where the tang has been filed off to be cantilevering out any more than it just has to. We want it to be a fairly solid fret with the tang in place and just a very small amount of step right there. And that's just per like jazz guitar building and stuff like that. So because what we're going to be doing, we're going to be rolling this binding into the neck lower and then up into the fretboard on the top, and that's why it's going to feel like a real nice jazz guitar. Okay, so let me check the time. 15 minutes of coming out of the gate. I think I talked enough about using that tool. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go over to my routing stage. I'm going to pause and then go ahead and machine this off. And I'm going to come back every 5 or 6 passes and kind of show you what I've got. And it's a little bit chaotic because there's ABS dust everywhere and shavings and stuff like that. And I'll just show you. You'll see the importance of why I like using the dovetail bit, because I'm really watching the very corner of that bit as it's going down, and I'm relieving the material. So let me pause, go do some machine work, and then we'll go from there. Okay, what I discussed about the thickness being thicker up here than it is down here is where. No, I'll take that back. This will work to my advantage, because even if I got a little bit too close down here when I was machining it, as long as I don't overstep my boundaries up here, by the time I get up here, if anything, I'll be getting in the clear. But on this side, it was where you would have gotten in trouble, because you're working from your left to your right. If you had have started cutting this one all the way down to that very finished edge right there, probably would have gotten yourself in a little bit of trouble. You might have gotten away with it, but it would have been really close. So with that said, once you're doing the bass side, you're working from the left to the right, and you're making that initial pass just to kind of gauge your depth, and also the placement of your straight edge fence on the back, because you're leaving it pinned out here and you're just very slowly moving it. I'm going to exaggerate, but you've got it pinned out here with a quick grip, and then you're going to move it over a little bit here, make a short pass, make certain that it doesn't come through just yet, then push it back a little deeper, make another pass. And it doesn't matter, even if you overshot your boundaries, you're up high enough that you would come through the binding and not risk getting into the wood. So if you do that, if you did overshoot your boundaries, well, then you need to back up and start over and start assessing back here, because you have got to watch your dovetail bit slowly work its way over to the very edge of the binding by pushing this fence back a little bit. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to try to get that really close, and then I'll probably make one full pass just to make certain that see, I'm perfectly true and straight, so I don't have to worry about running into any sort of gully or anything like that. So anyway, it's kind of common sense, but it's one of those things that if you've never done this before, you wouldn't really know how much machine work you could do to really relieve your job, to guarantee that you're not atop this thing with 120 grit sandpaper trying to work off all that binding, and then only to run the risk of the paper floating and kissing the pearl and then screwing up your pearl. Okay, not being melodramatic, but I'm just trying to do as much true like machine work as I can, so that the actual blending of the binding to the wood, the frets to the fretboard, are as seamless as possible. So, all right, let me pause again. Okay, also make certain that you keep your drill press deck tight, at the main post, because as you're kind of pushing on this, if your drill press deck was not tight back at the main post of the press, then you'll start pushing it, it'll start moving on you a little bit. So make certain that if you do make any height adjustment, make sure you lock down. But you can see how I'm just about to come through. It's paper thin right now. and I've only come down about half that distance, so I'm going to be able to drop about another 1/16 of an inch. But the next pass I'm going to make, I'm going to take that top off and probably just go all the way down, because there's no sense in doing 15 pauses here as I ease into this. So I'll go ahead and do some of the work and then come back and we'll go from there. Okay, I think one more pass and I'll probably, or probably 2 or 3 more passes and I'll be really close. But I went ahead and I found that it works best to just leave a little bit of the full thickness on the back rather than trying to do the full bite, because since I'm running at a little bit slower RPM, I was tempted to machine off all of the thickness at once, and it kind of felt like it was grabbing a little bit, and that's the last thing you want, because if there was any bit of weakness in your glue, then it might grab your binding and cause it to break loose a little bit. So I eased the fence back out and just thinned out the material. And then what you'll do here is just take your fingernail and hit the edge, and that'll clean up your overhang. So you can see my point, and by using the drill press overhead and the small dovetail bit, you can rough out a whole bunch of bulk that you would have spent a lot of time with a radius block, sandpaper, files, and crap like that, and very unlikely that you would not have risked scratching something or gouging something. So let me go back to the table and I'll go ahead and get it really close to finished, and then we'll be getting ready to pause and start getting ready to install the fretboard. I had to step back in briefly and just show you, because what I'm doing now is I'm easing the fence back out in order to get the depth right. So that'll let you know that your depth is just about going to guarantee you that you're not going to get into your wood. So, but if you get that close, then you know that you're not going to be leaving any excess material up there, but you're also guaranteeing that you're not going to step in your wood. So what do you do now? Leave your fence exactly where it is, guarantee that your tabletop is locked in place, and then just start lowering the bit or either raising the table. And if you raise the table, then just proceed with caution that you didn't slip and get in, because just it would only take one pass, and every pass I make, I always ease into it and just guarantee that nothing has moved on me. But we've just within a matter of a minute or two, we've accomplished an enormous amount of work that is very precise, very clean and straight, and will guarantee that we're going to have a beautiful job, and quite frankly, a very easy job too. So no sense in keeping it difficult. Okay, I might be able to get away with one more pass, but I'm not going to chance it because I can't catch my fingernail on that. And I could have set the depth just a little bit more, but I'm going to show you how now you can just take your chisel and just start working your way to the finish line. See, I'm already getting to the point to where I always push away. What I'm going to try to do now is just kind of use if there's a wall of binding there, I'm going to try to use it to my advantage to cut that glue. So what I meant by the glue, that's what I meant by if you had tried to wipe that glue away, you probably just would have smeared it into the wood and made matters worse. But by allowing that glue to squeeze up, now all you're having to do is take the corner of the chisel there, go across that, keep your hand out of the way. It's usually when I get hurt is I'm pushing with the chisel and holding something, and just something real simple like that where I'm like pushing there, but if I got a really sharp chisel, man, you can just cut yourself in half. Man, I got a scar right there to prove it. Took the whole top of that thumb off not long ago, about 1.5 years ago. If I did that, I would not leave it on video, I can assure you. So, all right, so now you're just kind of scraping a little bit. Remember, it's getting taller back here. because we've got our our table set up at a certain height. So now that we're getting closer to the edge of the fretboard, it's getting thinner. So, and there's just no way around that, you know. But we have literally taken out 99% of the bulk sand work. So all we're going to be doing now is just really just kind of rating this edge down here and then just kind of lowering some of this, just blending all the binding into the wood. But again, you could do this atop, you probably could do this atop something like this, but I don't really see the point because you just run the risk of something slipping and binding on you, and just one little scratch on this pearl could really cause you to have to work a lot later on. So if anything, right now you can just use your fingernail to clean off that excess. So again, we did this entire job and basically never touched the fretboard other than with tape and a little bit of glue spillover. And what does that guarantee? I don't know if I got one of the rags that I wiped with. Neither here nor there. When I wipe this back with some acetone, you'll see just how much color is in this board. This is just, you know, one or two wipes with the acetone, and you took out a lot of color. So if we had been continually wiping and cleaning and wiping and cleaning, we might have hurt the color. Well, maybe not, because hell, that's beautiful. So maybe not, proceed with caution. Just enjoy your beautiful Madagascar rosewood fretboard and just realize that it's probably that same color all the way through. And I'm going to be careful with side bleed over right here, because once I glue this down, I'll be gluing this down with a tight bind to assure that if there was ever some sort of damage, so I got some red right there bled over, really won't matter because it's going to get rounded over. But I'm going to clean that a little bit more before I glue it down, just to make certain that none of that red got in there. But it is going atop a Honduran mahogany red lower, so even if it did stain a little bit on the bottom glue line, it's not going to matter anymore. But like if you were putting it on a white guitar, well then yeah, you better be really clean. So anyway, I just like the idea of doing all the final sanding on the actual guitar from here on out, because we're way too close to the finish line to run the risk of rushing anything. Okay. So let me pause to get the table cleaned up, organized, and think about how I want to continue talking about the work, and then moving into tight bond mode. Okay, I changed my mind. I made a discovery when I was getting ready to do some of the dry fit clamping, and then it dawned on me, well, my clamping caul, I spent a lot of time radiusing this so that anytime I'm gluing a fretboard down, it makes full contact with the actual fretboard. And if this binding is high, then it's not going to make contact. Or worse, it would make contact unequally. So I'm nice and flush in this area right in here from here on down. So I'm going to take advantage of the flat side of that clamping caul, put it up here on my table, and do exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. But now I realize it's probably fairly important that I do. I got some 220 sandpaper, and if you can see my operation here, I'm going to be doing this sand work until I see a little bit of the rosewood start coming up on here. And the key here is to actually put a little bit of down pressure to really stay in contact with what it is you're sanding, because you don't want that paper floating too much. However, the 220 is definitely not going to hurt the pearl. So I got a pretty mean grip on that right there. probably no sense in doing any witness lines because we were going to be doing this once it was atop the neck lower, and that's why I got this guitar on the table to do some demonstration. Yeah, see, that's beautiful. That really helps take some of that material off. And the cool thing about the radius, you can just feel the tool actually stay in line. Okay, so look, just a faint amount of rosewood coming up right there. Feels really nice. Okay, I'm just barely catching my thumbnail back there, so I'll focus the remaining attention kind of off the tail end there. Or I'll start up here to get a feel, but then I'll start putting pressure about right there. And I can actually now see the rosewood begin to sand a little bit. Yeah, see there's some of my rosewood showing up. So that's probably close enough, but we'll see. Still catching just a little bit right there. Nothing right there. Okay, lets me know I'm right-handed because I got a little bit heavy on that side. So now I'm just gonna put a little bit more focus on for the left side there. And you can actually even ride off the fretboard just a little, but don't do that too much. And at this point, you could even take your crosscut file, just stay straight. So I guess I won't have to do nearly as much on the guitar now. So the key to doing this job is this little caul having a real nice foundation, because since it's pretty much the same width as the board, it allows me room for my finger to hang over and not be cumbersome by anything in the way where I can't get a good grip, you know. And again, that might not be a bad thing because it gives you a guide. Who knows? A lot of different ways to build a guitar. So I can actually still see some of the glue right there. So that's a very good indication that I've got a little bit further to go right there. Very unlikely that the fretboard would be out of radius and need additional radius work coming from Stuart McDonald. That thing should be CNC cut and just about ready to glue down. So feels great. All right, let's look at what we got. Let's see how it's, just look at this thickness here versus that height right there. So they definitely get thinner, and that's just once you change the radius, the compound measurements start kicking in. But the cool thing is it's very consistent. What we saw on the other side is exactly what we have over here. So it's a beautiful fretboard, and it is very close to being a finished fretboard as well. I'm gonna do just a little bit more sanding with a file right here. Just relying on the actual fretboard itself to guide me. And this is exactly how I would have done it once it was on the guitar. Or if I'm building a fretboard for someone where I'm going ahead and going to install the frets for them and then just sell them this fretboard and ship it to Switzerland or Japan or Australia or somewhere in Georgia, anywhere in the world. You probably could have built 7 guitars by the time you build one fretboard. Again, the reason Leo Fender was an absolute genius, he came in with the telly and the Strat, and he ate everybody's lunch, took everybody's lunch money. And they were, I don't really think Gibson and Gretsch ever fully recovered then. They just had to continue focusing on doing real good guitars. Obviously, the Gibsons are incredible guitars and the Gretsch as well, but they had to just focus on continuing to do real flashy guitars for Gretsch and just very traditional guitars for the Gibson manufacturing. Because once Gibson solidified the fact that they were an exceptional company and they didn't need a lot of bling like the Gretsch, and I don't think there was any bad vibe between Gretsch and Gibson, if I'm not mistaken. I think even Ted McCarthy or McCarty, whatever his name is, and Fred Gretsch actually shared a lot of manufacturing knowledge, just from what I've heard. I don't know if that's true or not. But they weren't really competing against each other. But man, once Leo came along, it shook them up. And not only that, but when Leo put his Fender, when he put the Fender necks in, bolted not only level with the, or just in line with the body, bolted in with four bolts. He was able to put them in a case, that was 2.5 inches thick. So, but nonetheless, it's not nearly as attractive as something like this right here. So, all right, she's ready to glue down. So I'll do a little bit more acetone clean work on the bottom, but it should be clean enough now to hold the glue. But rather than pausing, I'll just go ahead and start talking about what it is we're going to do. Try to get the table cleaned up a little bit. I intentionally designed this call to do just that, to glue down a traditional Gibson or Gretsch fretboard, or Fender as well, other than these probably would not hit because, see, I actually have the 1st fret location right there and the 18th fret location right there drilled through, because what's going to happen is I'm going to identify I know for a fact that directly below that is the 1st fret location off to the side of the truss rod, and this is the 18th fret location off to the side of the truss rod for this scale. It might work with a 25-inch scale, but it probably would require that I drill the different one for a 25.5-inch scale. And I guarantee this one would probably work, but if you were doing a Fender scale, but you would probably have to offset it. And I don't do stuff like that, because you'd be surprised by not having that clamping force. It might allow it just enough for this whole end out here to roll up. So you got to make something that's all the way down. And what this is going to act as is a what's called a clamping caul, to guarantee that it's very easy to do, but it's also distributing perfectly true radius gluing support all the way down that job. You could come in and just go right down the middle with a straight edge, and it works. It literally does work, but this will guarantee, especially that since you've got a finished edge here, that you've truly distributed all the clamping pressure equally, and you're guaranteed that you've squeezed out anything that was not necessary by going all the way out to that edge. So we'll get there, but nonetheless, that's what I was about to talk about, and why I've got this on the table, the 16th inch drill bit. Once I mark these locations, I'm going to go over to my drill press and drill a hole right here and then I'm going to put a small brass tack through there that is right at about 1/16 of an inch. And then that, you'll see it in a minute, but that little nail, that tack will be sticking up here, and it'll be sticking up right here at the 18th fret location. And it'll guarantee that once we've kind of pushed this fretboard into place with the wet glue, and we've cleaned up all the excess and squeeze out, and then that's when I'll ease the nail through the hole, and then find the location again and tap it into the lower. So you'll be gluing it in, leaving that nail in place. I don't know why I'm talking about it, because you're about to see every bit of this operation. And then don't worry about it. Just leave that nail in there, clamp it in place. Yet keep an eye on it, make certain that nothing traveled, and then flip the lights off and let it dry for a good 24 hours. And this is why when we're gluing it to Ed's guitar, you'll see why it felt like it slowed us down by not doing any of the finish work on the back or the headstock. But we're going to have to be shaping the whole back of the neck in order to achieve our target thickness anyway. So even though the guitar lower got shelved while it was drying and paint was being applied and stuff, it wasn't a lost cause, but it did slow the job down probably by about 2 weeks. But nonetheless, at the end here, it makes it so much easier for me, because now I'm only shaping and painting that net, or clear coating that finished guitar once. And as I move into the headstock and I start taping off to do the black, I don't have to worry about coming back and shaping and sanding and then retouching up black and crap like that. I did that on a guitar not too long ago, a couple of years ago, and it was a freaking nightmare, where everything that I thought I was achieving trying to keep the job going, it made my job 10 times harder. It made the build process look really attractive, but it kicked my ass because I basically had to repeat everything that I had done months prior to that. I'm never going to do that crap again. So anyway, so let me pause, clean up the table a little bit, and I won't need that on the station. I thought I might need that to demo some of that sanding, but I was able to do that by hand. So let me pause, clean up, get a drink of water, and then we'll come back and with Ed's guitar, and we'll glue the fretboard down. Let me spend a few minutes talking about something here that's probably the most important thing about the entire build, and that is making certain that your fretboard is truly glued down on center line, because a lot of times, and if you're really smart, you'll build everything just a little bit big in this area right here, so that you can shape your way to the finished guitar. I've never been able to build everything about this center line and all this stuff, the exact finished dimension, and then just glue the fretboard down and it'd be perfect. Now, I can assure you, once I glued everything in, I did make certain that the center line of the neck was true with the body and all that jazz. And as I've covered in numerous videos in the past, how the Explorer, or the Explorer Replica, is by far the most difficult guitar you'll ever build, because everything is interdependent upon that true center line. So you could just about bet when I pick up one of my Explorer bodies, I've spent an enormous amount of time assuring that neck is on center with the body. And these two holes right here would not be drilled unless I was assured that they were truly where they were supposed to be. If like if this is the bridge, and it is the bridge, those are the bridge studs. I never go ahead and drill the two tailpiece studs, because this guitar might sell to someone that wants a Floyd Rose. So, and then they want a stained gray guitar. So it's wise that I did not drill any of that stuff. But if I've got these two holes drilled right here, it means that I used my template to lay out everything, even all these outside critical lines, which are so critical on this type of guitar build. So with that said, the way you can triple check there at the end, that you might measure this and go, okay, well then just glue that up there. And if this is a little bit too wide, then make it perfectly centered as far as the overhang. But that's not the case, because the way I can't remember what it is. I think it's this top here is always, or whatever it is, it's either the top or the bottom. I intentionally design a little bit fat. I'm pretty sure it's the top, so that when I'm gluing the fretboard down, if there's going to be any overhang at all, like right here, like I could catch a thumbnail, it would be on this side, and this side right here is engineered to go ahead and be pretty much flush with the finished guitar. But the way you assess that is obviously turn the guitar around and go ahead and I'll go ahead and just go through this, because these are things that I would always engineer off camera, and I didn't ever get to talk about them. But for instance, like when I was gluing this overlay down on this right here, I was already cutting that square right there, and I was gluing that overlay in place based on where the fretboard was and the 19th fret location, and then even where the actual thickness of the nut would actually cause everything to land. So let me just go ahead and do a little bit of clamp work here, and I'll show you how, if you get in a pattern of building this way, then you've created some crutches along the way that'll guarantee that you can just about make assumptions. And I'm not going to be able to see it. Yeah, I can see it from here, but I would be willing to bet you this guitar that that's the 19th fret location, not just because I've got a pearl there, but because it's perfectly in line with the actual glue joint. And what is this? This is Ed's fretboard on one of my other 58 Explorers. And what's going on right here? Okay, this is just barely flush in this pocket right here. So that will guarantee that when I put my pickup ring in here, the pickup ring will cover any sort of machine hole that is right there. However, keep in mind, this guitar is not designed to receive a fretboard with binding. So once the new fretboard goes down for this body, it won't have the binding right here. So there'll be a little bit of a ledge going across there that will receive the front edge of the pickup ring. But even if I did elect to put binding on this guitar, then I would still would have, and if I put binding on this guitar, then it will push the neck pickup back a little bit, but there's no gaping hole right here. It'll be just barely covered up, but nonetheless, it might require that you shave a little bit back here to relocate that pickup location. But there's just so much engineering going on. But the reason I wanted to show this part right here is to find the actual trapezoidal path, PATH, center line of where you're getting ready to glue this fretboard down or tack it to the neck lower, so that you could then pretty much clamp it into place and know that you've got the true guitar. And with this one right here, there's just a little bit of material right here and just barely a little bit of material right there. So I will if I were gluing this fretboard down to this body, I would have to determine, do I need to flush out with the top, or do I need to flush out with the bottom, or do I need to split the difference? And the way I will achieve that is by keeping this clamp to the nut location perfectly true and center, putting the two pieces of tape down there, and you can see the two lines that I've already drawn, assessing where the center line is. Because again, like I said, you can't just glue this fretboard down and think, oh yeah, I'm sure back in the past I did a really good job machining that perfectly centered. No, man, you might have got off a little bit, and now this is where you're going to correct your errors, but keep the center line of the fretboard truly in center line with the pickups and the pick guard, because you might have missed it somewhere down the line. And don't worry too much about the center line of this body joint right here anymore. That might not be trustworthy. I'm not saying it's not on this guitar, and I'm not saying it would not be. Well, there's not one on Ed's guitar because it's a Goldtop. But what will dictate Ed's center line is the actual pickup cavity locations where the P90s go and the center of those P90s. And yes, I have drilled Ed's. I'm looking at Ed's right now, so I have drilled Ed's bridge location, so I'll be able to trust that as well. But nonetheless, I'll still be doing quite a bit of engineering to guarantee that I'm splitting hairs here, but that I'm right on point and stuff like that. So anyway, that's and probably what I'll do before I glue Ed's. I say probably my ass. We spent this much time with it. I'll pause for about 20 minutes and I'll engineer Ed's body just to make certain that when I drive that tack in at the 18th fret location, and then before we flip off the lights and kill this video and we're gluing that fretboard down, we will be guaranteed that Ed's fretboard will be going in the correct location. Okay, so but this is the way you would do it. You would just put this up here, make a real fine pencil line here, hold it steady, make a real fine pencil line right there, and then measure the difference between the pencil or the pin line and the drill location there, the pin line and the drill location there, and then go ahead and double check the center line of the body and maybe ask yourself, okay, well, are we? Is it true? Is it like if you could put the number 6 or 7 right there on the center line of the body, and then measure over 1 1/8, and then measure over 1 1/8, and then you can just start assessing what's going on. But don't let this glue joint of the body determine where you put this. If anything, you need to get your pick guard and put it up there and ask yourself, okay, did I truly build a true and accurate guitar? And that's where I'm going with this. Because if you didn't build a accurate guitar, that's okay. Let's start cheating the numbers a little bit and make it all work out. Read between the lines. I'm not talking about building a shoddy guitar, but just know that sometimes your routing template will just be off ever so slightly by a 64th of an inch, or maybe when you were drilling these locations, you might have gotten sloppy that day. But just always get in the habit of if you're getting ready to define a point like that, don't drill that location, or don't drill that location, or don't drill that location, etc. Don't route that channel. Don't route that pickup unless you know you've engineered it. And if I've got a hole in one of these bodies, that means I've engineered it. But again, this location right here might not be the finished guitar. It might require a little bit more shaping on one of the sides. So just always go into that when you're doing a build. If you're building a guitar, again, as I say, build a telly, man. It's a hell of a lot easier. Just buy the body already machined and buy the neck already with frets in it, and just get a Phillips head screwdriver. And I joke from time to time about the only thing you need to build a Telecaster is a Phillips head screwdriver and a soldering gun. That's about it. I joke. There's a lot more going on than that. But nonetheless, let me pause and get set up for Ed's guitar. We'll do a little bit of engineering, and then we'll try to finish his guitar. Okay, I've spent about 20 minutes with it, just laying out everything and making the assessments. The short is exactly what I said. What's going to happen is it's going to be going fairly close to flush with this side, but it will be in that way just a little bit, not much, just enough to kind of, well, let me put it where it's supposed to be. Just enough that you can feel your fingernail catching. But the cool thing about that is the shaping and the lacquer thinner is going to fill that in. This side over here is going to get shaped a little bit, but not much. It's really close to the finished guitar. And if I recall, it seems like I remember engineering all this before I even did the binding and the gold, because I was talking about, just offset and thicknesses and stuff like that. But obviously, as I just clarified a few minutes ago, we're working off all these different points. That's a constant. We don't want that to move. These pickup locations are constant. We don't want them to move, even though I just bumped it. So the way you could do this is just take this line right here and that line right there, and transfer that point up onto your tape and just make a reading. And then you've already found the center line based on just everything. Well, what I did, I found the center between these two holes right here that are drilled for the bridge. And then I just drew a straight line off the center of the tenon, because I knew I had already engineered this a long time back and I knew that everything about it was true. So I just went ahead and drew that center line. And then what I did, I stepped in, and I do this a lot on most jobs. Wherever my trapezoidal path hits, I know it's going to be around 2 1/4 is going to be the flare out here, maybe 2 3/8 or something like that. So I just measure off that center line and just make an identifying mark here and an identifying mark there. It means nothing other than both sides are symmetrical. They're perfectly true to center. Then as I lay my fretboard up here, and I'm perfectly centered down here on the center of the nut location. The neck location is what I should be saying. So that's what I'm working from. So now all I got to do is just lay this up here, and I don't even have to make any marks. Let me just see if I can do this without making a fool out of myself. Yeah, I don't even have to make any marks. I just hold this where I want it, and then I assess how much the straight edge is hanging off of that little mark right there. And we all should have a calibrated enough eye that you can look at that and go, okay, it's about a 1/16 of an inch. And then hold it in place. I'm going to intentionally put it off a little bit so it would be alarming. You would be alarmed to go, whoa, something's wrong. So I've intentionally shifted it over to the left so that you would go, whoa, well, I'm directly on the line right there. Well, then what does that mean? If I'm directly on the line, all I got to do is just push the fretboard over just enough to kind of start splitting the difference. And then, and I'm not talking about doing cowboy work here. I'm talking about finding the true center line of the playing guitar. And if you've done a good job, then it'll be perfectly true and centered with this pickup cavity as well. So I moved it over to the right a little bit. Might have gone a little bit too much. Let me put it back. Okay, so I can see I can just barely see my dot up there on the top corner of the ruler. I can just barely see my line. Hold my thumb on it. We haven't moved anything down at the nut location. Okay, so I'm about 1/32 of an inch. So let's push the fretboard over to the left about a 1/64. Now I'm about a little more than the 1/64 of an inch. I just moved the fretboard over to the left a little bit. Put the straight edge back up here. And now I'm looking. I hope that's showing up. I'm doing the best I can. But right there at the corner of the straight edge is the mark. So I know that is the ideal location right there. But I'm not through yet. What I want to do now is hold that in that location. Then I want to take this clear ruler and push it up against the edge of the binding there. And I want to ask myself, what is the overhang from this imaginary line to the edge of the pickup cavity? Because I want to see how centered the fretboard is with the actual pickup cavity. And they ought to be really darn close, if not identical. And I've already assessed mine. Mine is just ever so slightly under 5/8 of an inch. So maybe that didn't move. I hope that didn't move. Put it where it was. So I measure over and I see roughly a little bit under 5/8 of an inch right there. And 5/8 of an inch on that side. I'm looking at that point right there. So what does that tell me? That tells me that my fretboard is true with the stud location for the bridge. My fretboard is perfectly centered with my neck pickup, which the bottom of the neck pickup and the bottom of the bridge pickup define that location right there. in that location right there. So with that said, I have a true guitar. I don't really have to assess anything else because I started assessing it from the very center line of the bridge. And if everything is, once you land one centering, then everything else will start reaffirming that you did a good job on your build. And if there's something that's off, well, then you make the determination of what you want to do to address it. So, and with that said, I'm going to pause because I've been at this for about 25 minutes. Let me pause, get organized a little bit, and see if I'm even going to be able to pull off the gluing here on the camera. Okay, since we're already over an hour, I'm just going to hold off on trying to glue this on camera because I've still got some stuff to do. I need to warm this glue. This is really cold, and I got to clean the fretboard or the neck lower with some acetone. And I'm going to do a little bit more engineering just to make certain that I'm truly on point because this is one of those jobs that once that glue is finished, I want the guitar to be finished as well. So, and since I've got just a little bit of overhang right here, I want to see if there's a possibility I might be able to split the difference a little bit and not have to do hardly any shaping at all. So if I can do that, then that'll be cool. But if not, then I'll plan on doing a little bit of sanding and shaping because I've already done a lot of really beautiful clear coat work right there. And if I'm within a 64th of an inch of the actual playing, the central line of the guitar, then that's close enough for rock and roll and close enough for this guitar as well. And it'll keep me from burning into that and reinventing the wheels. So, but I wouldn't be able to do that if I just started rushing this video in order to glue the fretboard down. So let's take a quick look at the guitar. I thought it wouldn't move. Probably won't be able to. I'll just try to keep it real flat, but it's really beautiful as long as it doesn't move on me and I don't bump anything. And that's the tricky thing about once you get to this point, you're trying to make certain that you don't scratch anything or screw anything up, but really beautiful guitar. Very, very cool, very rare. Never seen this before. Oh, I'm nowhere near where I should be. I started to tape that down in the location, but then I thought, no, we'll get there. It's still not a finished guitar, but that's probably good enough to be on camera. Nonetheless, really cool. And that might be the screenshot right there, one of those. I can turn it a little bit, maybe hold it in place. Well, hell, guess not. We'll just have to go with that right there. And eventually we'll talk about fillets and stuff like that. So, there's still a lot to do, a lot of small things, but nonetheless, great relief to have that fretboard machined and behind us. And, just it's a great feeling. So anyway, I appreciate you guys dropping in. And the next video, it will definitely be glued down. The neck will be shaped because once this glues down, and it'll dry within 12 hours. So, and I'm about to glue it down right now. So tomorrow morning, I'll be thinning out that neck and shaping the profile per the dimensions that Ed gave me, and then shaping it per his specs. And then we'll be ready to start clear coating the back, taping off the top. So the cool thing at that point, it'll be there won't be anything that we'll be waiting on. We'll just be doing the operation building the guitar. So with that said, appreciate you dropping in, and I'll see you guys in the next video, possibly tomorrow. If not, tomorrow by Sunday afternoon. And if anything, by Sunday afternoon, we ought to have a husk, an actual husk that we can weigh and see what it feels like, and then maybe even drop a few screws locations in here and do a little bit of mock-up. But nonetheless, we've already got our wiring harness. Where is it? Oh, it's probably on the other table. We've already got our wiring harness done here, and all this will just be dropping these in and doing some soldering. So the cool thing now, we're really way over the hurdle of getting a husk. And once you got a husk, then it turns into a guitar really fast. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.